Ladies and gentlemen, if you are hearing this, you have once again tuned in the Consequence of Habit podcast. This is number 50 episodes. So I want to start off and say thank you to all of you listeners. This has become way bigger than I ever expected it to. We're in over 60 countries right now. This thing's building steam. We got a lot of great things happening. I'm pleased to announce that we are officially a 501c3 nonprofit. There'll be some more information coming out about that, about a new website, events coming up. We're going to have some actual events, and how we plan on growing this thing, man. We're going to be talking about a lot of habits, trying to make lives better. So thank you to all the support. And I want to put out a huge thank you to my wife and my family for helping support this thing. To be honest with you, there is a lot of time and commitment that goes into that. So they have been amazing on giving me a little space and allowing me to build this thing. And on that note, speaking of building, I have a favor. For 50 episodes, all I ask is I need some likes. I shouldn't say that. I don't need likes. I need just at least a review. If you guys could log on to Apple, wherever you listen to your podcast, and just leave some type of review. Why it means a lot, I don't know. But in the world of podcasts, that seems to have a big impact on how it's listed and how it's kind of advertised. So if you could do that, I would greatly appreciate it. 50 episodes, everybody. All right, this week's guest is a man who is on a mission. He's in a transition in his life. He's spent, I think 24 years in the United States Navy. And throughout that time, he's been involved with special operations units. But he had some hiccups, man. He had some problems along the way. It's that old liquid devil got him. He's very candid about his experiences with alcohol and specifically lack thereof, his journey in sobriety. In this episode, we get into why we do the things that we do. It's connection between action and emotion, or emotion and action. I think it goes both ways. Chris has become an expert in mindfulness and meditation. And he's using these skills to help others, right? This notion of, I found my way through this storm, and now part of my mission is to help others do exactly the same. And man, Chris, he embodies that. But I'm going to let him tell the rest of the story. So please welcome to the podcast, Mr. Chris Norris. All right, today we are joined by Chris Norris. Chris, I was going through your accolades on your LinkedIn, and it's extensive. There's a lot going on there, so I'm excited about this episode. I'm excited about talking about some things where we have some commonality and some areas that we don't. So, with that said, let's start off. First of all, where are you right now? What time is it, and what is your occupation?
Yeah, so first of all, hey, thanks for having me on, JT. I'm really excited to be here, man. I really like this podcast. I like the premise of it. I've listened to a few episodes, and I'm really impressed with some of the guests you've had on here as well. It's pretty cool. So, yeah, I'm in Misawa, Japan right now, and it is 4:35 in the morning. The sun is just coming up. I'm currently a safety chief here for the installation, and I was also the sexual assault response coordinator. I just turned that duty over. I'm a construction mechanic, CV chief by trade, and the majority of my experience comes from supporting Naval Special Warfare, where I worked for over a decade at Naval Special Warfare Development Group as a direct support technician. I got to do a whole bunch of fun things. So wow. That's me. I'm coming up on 24 years in the Navy, and I'll be having a transition ceremony here at the end of August. I wouldn't really call it retirement because I plan to keep working afterwards.
Are you there in Japan?
Yeah, I'll have it here in Japan, and then after that that ceremony concludes, we're going to Thailand. So
very cool.
My wife's from Thailand. So we're going to go back to Thailand for a few years. I plan to get my education from there with a master's of social work, and we'll go from there.
That's awesome.
Yeah, man.
So the reason I came across your name or kind of your story, I was fairly new to LinkedIn. We have a lot of the same contacts, and something had popped up, and I forget the exact wording, but it was something along the lines like 14 years ago. I made some decisions while intoxicated or something around alcohol, and it was just kind of talking about, talking about that and some of the changes that you had to make at a certain point in your life. And I mean, I guess we'll just jump right into it. Anyone who listens to this knows my own experiences around alcohol misuse, and it was the catalyst to get this change, not only in just myself, but the podcast, the nonprofit, all of it. So I love people that are vulnerable enough to tell these things, because I think it's so important. So if you could just give a quick rundown of what that looked like for you and why a change was necessary.
Yeah, for sure. I am in long-term recovery from alcohol use disorder. I've been sober for over 14 years. And what does that look like? Well, first time I got intoxicated, I was 11 years old. And I took to it like a fish to water, whether or not you could say I was born with an alcoholic gene or what have you. I didn't really come from a background of a lot of trauma or anything like that. There's nothing to easily explain why I took to alcohol so quickly. Yeah. When I drank, I was off to the races from the very start. So I had problems with alcohol all the way up, all through high school. And then as people were graduating high school, I remember I had no real plans to do anything. I was just like drinking and working a crappy job and living in a crappy apartment with a crappy girlfriend, and I was just going to blot it out to the miserable end.
Sure.
So something happened, man. I just actually had a post about this last night. I posted up about like post-traumatic growth type stuff. So I'll tell you what happened was I woke up in a dusty, dingy, nasty apartment in Albany, New York. It wasn't my own apartment. It was like a college flop house type scenario. And it was Christmas Eve, 1994. And my mother, of all people, was on the telephone. And back then we didn't have cell phones weren't really a thing. It was like a cordless phone. Mm-hmm. And she told me that my nephew had died. And my nephew, backstory is I come from a large family. So I was actually born an uncle. So my nephew was a year older than I was. And he was doing everything right while I was doing everything wrong. And here he was taken from this earth and I'm still around. And the news of that, of course, gutted me. But I remember as I drove back to my mom's house, and this was such a loser I am, in my mom's car. I had my mom's car at the time, back to her house. And that news and all that stuff, it lit like a little spark in me. And I started to think about how much I was wasting my life and I wasn't doing anything with my life. And I had to find a way out. I had to do something. So it took another 3 years, but eventually I joined the Navy. And when I joined the Navy, I was dry at the time. I hadn't drank in 8 months. Joined the Navy, and then as some alcoholics do, you fall prey to that little voice in the back of my head that goes, you know what? You hadn't drank in so long. You got your crap together now. I was living in California. I was in shape. I had a tan. I had a job. I was in the Navy. I just got out of school. I did really well. So I was like, I could probably drink again. I could probably have a couple drinks. But, the reality is I never had a couple of drinks my whole life. So I drank again and boom, it was off to the races again. And it was ugly. It was nasty. And I didn't come back out of that for another decade. So, yeah. I still did relatively well, in the military. I busted my butt and I was in for a few years and I screened and interviewed and was accepted in Naval Special Warfare Development Group. And I went from the Seabee Battalion that I was working in down in Mississippi up to Virginia Beach and started working there. And that place is, phenomenal. And I did well there as well. And I went through another selection training process while I was there and started doing more direct support for the Navy SEALs, and I was jumping out of the planes. I was shooting guns. I was working the comms. I was having a blast, but I just couldn't get that monkey off my back, man. That the alcohol just had me. So as hard as I worked all day and everything I did throughout the day and oftentimes at night, whenever I was off work, I was drinking, and oftentimes by myself, in my little apartment, just getting obliterated, just drinking myself into oblivion every night. It was getting really, really bad. So yeah, the post you saw was for my 14-year commemoration of being released from jail for my third driving under the influence charge. Yeah. And that was the last time I ever drank.
Yeah.
And it's, again, it was go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. I guess I can relate to some things, and to me, it's always this strange dynamic when professionally you're excelling, right? And it's like you have these two different lives going on. And I think sometimes that can trick you into thinking that you've got everything under control because in one aspect of your life, you've got things figured out. But it's those alone times when things can get tricky, and it's just when you the kind of rubber meets the road of where there's a problem, where there's not a problem.
Yeah, for sure. And I think I want to shift blame or anything about what happened with me, but we can folks can help facilitate that because I can remember back in 1999 of doing some crazy stuff drunk in Okinawa, Japan, and my chain of command at the time was like, he's a good worker, he's a hard worker, Yeah. And then they would just covered it up, just forgot about it. When they could have intervened at that point, I probably could have went to rehab then and saved a lot of pain and misery, but it's okay, it takes what it takes. But sometimes we can enable that behavior, where, my alcoholism would certainly show its ugly head every now and again. It just couldn't cover it up, whether I was out on a training trip or something out on the road and do something stupid and outrageous, So I couldn't drink like a normal person, and I couldn't stop drinking either. So yeah, getting out of jail and having a heart-to-heart discussion with myself and trying to figure this thing out, I ended up going to rehab. I ended up marrying my girlfriend from Thailand, and it's been a whirlwind adventure ever since, And as I talked about in that post you saw, it's like the benefits of that simple, it's a simple act of just not picking up a drink no matter what. It can be very difficult at times, but just that simple act really changed the trajectory of my life.
Sure.
So
sure.
I got my career back. I'm still married to that girl here over 14 years later, and have two lovely daughters with her, and we have a life together, and I got all my stuff back,
Yeah.
And I have something today that I didn't have prior to any of that, which is I'm comfortable in my skin, I'm super comfortable in my skin. I love myself today.
Yeah.
I know who
you're going to see, I'm taking a ton of notes, man, because you're saying some things that I just don't want to miss. And I'd say the first thing is, and we spoke about it, we covered it real quick before the podcast started, is the fact that the military culture has been intertwined with alcohol for a very long time. It's been a tool that's been used to it's used to celebrate, it's used to mourn. Like I said, if your girlfriend broke up with you when you're in the military, your buddies brought you out and they got you drunk. If you got promoted, you went out and you got drunk. If you weren't working, there was a good chance, especially if you're a drinker, you were going to make sure you were hanging out with the people that were like-minded, and you guys were going to go out and you're going to do your thing.
Mm-hmm.
And there comes a point where that works for some people, and they're just able to stop. And then there's people that are cut out of a different piece of wood. I think like you and I, where that process isn't the same. And I don't know what the process was for you. I was in the Air Force, but the stigma around that and the fact that people would just kind of push that aside and go, hey, he's a good worker, without actually recognizing the fact that this person is, at the end of the day, has a life or death problem that we, if we care and we we want to show them love, then what we're going to do is we're going to help facilitate some type of program for them. What was the experience? Was it, I imagine just because there's a DUI involved, it's more of just a punitive thing, or how much of it was like, hey, we have empathy for what you're going through, Chris?
Yeah, it's something, because I think some of it becomes like, nobody wants to acknowledge the elephant in the room, because maybe they think like, hey, if we think that like Chris is an alcoholic right. and he needs help, like,
Ruh-roh.
Shoot, I drink with Chris, you know? so if he's got a problem, what does that make me?
Yeah.
So, you know, and then, yeah, it wasn't, I mean, it wasn't a punitive thing, because if I didn't want to get the help, I probably could have got out of it. Mm-hmm. But I literally said, I need help. Like, I remember sitting in the back of the cop car and like, you know, and thinking to myself, at one point there was like a millisecond of peace and serenity where I was like, everything's going to be all right. I'm going to get the help I need out of this. But then it went right back to like, oh my God, my life is fucked.
Yeah.
But I remember when I was like asking for help, they were, I mean, I hate to say it, but they were really unprepared for that. Like the guy that was screening me was like, hey, are you sure? Like, I mean, it's no big deal. Like, he's like, I got a DUI, so I still drink, you know? And I'm like, no, man, like, you don't understand. Like, I need help. Like, I'm in bad shape. I was drinking every single day. I was going through, you know, withdrawals and DTs and everything in the morning. And I was sometimes, you know, a little hair of the dog in the morning to get my hands to stop shaking, you know? It was really bad. So when I had asked for help, there were, you know, a lot of people were like, oh man, like, you know, you think you're overreacting? I was like, no, you don't understand. Like, I really need help. And then, yeah, it's like, I mean, shoot, I don't want to say it because I know how bad it sounds, but I was like welcomed back to the command after rehab. People were trying to put beers in my hand after I'd already been to rehab. And I was like, no, I'm not doing that anymore. Like, I'm serious about this sobriety thing. So I threw myself as hard into sobriety as I was into drinking. You know, I was fucking full throttle. I was going to tons of meetings and working a program. And at the time it was, I was working the 12 steps, you know, and now my recovery looks a little different, but I still credit 12 steps with saving my life in that fellowship. So yeah, man, it's a hard, it was definitely difficult to, you know, at times to stay sober in the military, but, you know, I'm sure anywhere there would have been difficulties. I always just had this thing of like, if people were all around me were drinking, it was just that they can, I can't, and I let them. That's it, man.
It's acceptance, you know what I mean? Right? It's like accepting the fact that just doesn't work for me. That's cool. It works for them. And that actually leads me to my next question is, so you're coming from the special operations community. It's a very egocentric community, right? I mean, these people are, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that in the fact that you have to be confident in the person that you are and what your capabilities are. If you're wavering in that, this probably isn't the right community for you.
Yeah.
Did that affect, or do you think it affects maybe some individuals' ability to have that acceptance at all?
I think so. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think there's probably lots of people that are suffering in silence, you know, because I mean, what does that look like? I mean, in my mind, in many minds, coming forward and saying I have a problem, that's like coming forward and saying I am weak. Yeah. When it's actually the opposite, right? It takes a lot of balls for me to get on a platform and say, hey, my name's Chris. I'm a person in long-term recovery from an alcohol use disorder. You know, as you talk about being vulnerable, right? It takes a lot of courage to be vulnerable. But the cool thing about this is that I'm able to do that. And now JT and I are a little better connected. And maybe the listeners, you know, out there in radio land are more connected with me, and I feel better. I'm more comfortable in my skin because I'm able to let this stuff out and just give you, like, you're getting the full version of me, man. You know what I mean? I don't hide it. So, but yeah, it's hard because it looks like I'm weak. I need help, you know, where that takes courage. Yes. To say that.
Yes. And I just said this on a podcast where I've had a lot of the same experiences where this is no shit, Chris. 15 minutes. Well, that's not true. About 45 minutes ago, I had to swing by and drop something off for a buddy, and it was at a restaurant or bar, and they were sitting there, and I ordered a Heineken Zero, right? So I drink non-alcoholic beer, and the guy a coworker who's down the bar says, he goes, "You're still on that kick?" Now it's been 2.5 years, and I said, "Well, yeah, I'm still on that kick."
Yeah, it's not a kick anymore, man.
Right. And to the point where, I've had other conversations with people, and they've said, they've asked me about not drinking. And these were usually the same people that clown me. And I apologize to anybody that is hearing this again, because I've told this story, but I've always said, hey, there's these basic things in life, these things that you think of yourself. So Chris, you could say I'm a father and a husband, I'm a Navy chief, I'm all these different things, and these are all compromised by alcohol, right? If I continue down this path, a lot of these other things would not be there. And these are basic things. So I would tell somebody that. I would say, hey, this was my journey, and I had a real problem, and it was compromising them. So I did the same thing you did. Is I reached out for help, and I went to a 12-step program. And they said, oh, man, it was that bad? And I said, dude, did you just hear everything else I said? Like, these are the most basic things in life, and they're compromised by this one thing, that if I can figure this out, my life will be exponentially better, and it has been. Mm-hmm. So I completely get it. And then, so one guy goes to me, goes, well, if I go in a room, say I went to a meeting, and what if I see somebody else I know there? And I go, do you think that's a weakness? Because weakness is continuing to do the same thing that you've always done, that thing that compromises you. Like a grown man or woman with strength, they're the ones that can accept the fact that they need help. So I completely agree. And I love the fact that there's people like you talking about this to hopefully flip the script on that. And especially post, I mean, I wish it was always like this, but 9/11, just because the way alcohol fits in with mental health, and we're going to get into some mindfulness and some meditation things, but I think it's a huge crutch that people have been leaning on for too long, and you're right, suffering. Yeah.
And now, especially in this day and age with the pandemic and everything, I mean, there's people that are drinking to intoxication more often than probably ever before,
100%.
And they're thinking like, it's literally like trying to put out a fire with gasoline. Like when you're drinking alcohol to try to help with anxiety, it actually makes it worse. So, but yeah, I was just thinking about, like, if anyone's ever given me a hard time about my drinking, it's normally a pretty good indicator that they have a problem with alcohol as well. Right. Because I put myself back, 15, 16 years ago, if I was drinking and you were in the room and you weren't, like, I didn't even want you there. Like, get the hell out of here. Like, this isn't a spectator sport, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's because I had a massive problem with alcohol.
I've had people tell me, they're like, well, I don't trust people that don't drink.
Right.
And I said, well,
that's the weirdest thing, man. I'm like, why not? I'm more trustworthy now. Trust me. Trust me when I say that. I'm more trustworthy now than I was when I was drinking.
Like, dude, I peed in a clothes hamper. Like, I don't know what your vetting process for trust is, but it's clearly lacking.
Right, man. Yeah, I'm definitely more trustworthy now. That's 100%. For sure. But yeah, so I don't know. There were some other things I wanted to say, but I lost my train of thought about that.
You mentioned loving yourself, and I think getting back to the fact of when you're alone is those are the times, like, it's easy to package something in front of others, especially when it's a job that you can do well. But that, I think that notion or that image of what people thought somebody suffering with alcohol or drug misuse looked like. And it was always that TV movie kind of thing where it was just somebody trashed all day long. And I'm always happy or not happy. I just think that the story needs to be included, that there's a lot of people out there that have an image of one thing, but please, it's almost like Facebook or any type of social media. Just know what you see is not the whole story. And there's a lot of people that could benefit. They could just benefit.
Right.
It's just going to make their life a lot better. And that's not everybody. Some people, I'm sure you'll agree. I mean, and this is always said in the rooms. When you see somebody leave a half a drink on a table, and you're wondering what the hell are they doing?
Right.
Well, there's the difference.
That's outrageous.
Yeah.
But I think, and to your point, there's high functioning alcoholics, and if you looked at my resume, you'd probably be like, oh, there's no way this guy's alcoholic.
Sure.
Look at everything he's done. But then some of it is also like, well, I don't know. I kind of boil it down like, man, I think I was doing a lot of that stuff and I was performing so well because I was trying to like make up for the fact that like inside, I think I'm the biggest piece of shit in the world. So I have to like outwardly like prove these things to the world. Like I can do hard things and I'm doing all this great stuff. Look at me, I got my stuff together. I got all my poop in a group. But inwardly, like I'm not feeling it. Like I'm feeling a lot of self-loathing and just constantly beat myself up and sometimes rightfully so. I was doing some pretty bad things. So it was like I was doing things that wore away on my self-esteem because they're pretty terrible stuff.
Yeah.
So now the opposite has to happen once I sober up. Now I have to go out and do esteemable acts and do charitable acts and do service work, as they would call it in the rooms, right? And so I could feel good about myself, and know that, I'm a good person. I've always been a good person. I just had I had a problem with alcohol. As I said, I'm in recovery from an alcohol use disorder. It's really that simple.
Isn't it strange? You say, hey, I do service work to feel good about myself. And this goes into the habit thing where you're doing the other stuff to feel good about at least feel good. It's just a really short term kind of thing. And actually, I had put a post up on LinkedIn saying, hey, if you could give advice to your 20-year-old self, that was almost your exact phrase, right? I was
absolutely, yeah. So I'm totally on that trip. Is like short-term sensory pleasures lead to long-term detriment. And now short-term struggle, detriment, challenge leads to long-term benefits. So what do I mean by that? Like we were doing it. We don't even like know, like, hey, I'm going to go to the gym. What am I doing when I go to the gym? I'm working out, right? Well, what am I really doing? I'm putting strain. I'm putting struggle. I'm tearing muscle. Why? So it can be built up stronger. So now, rather than like just constantly chasing pleasure and constantly looking for the easier, softer way of doing things, like I'm just like, that would lead to what? That would lead to me like laying on my couch with my feet up, eating ice cream and watching TV because it's soft and it's pleasurable, which eventually I'm gonna suffer immensely in the end. When instead nowadays I go out and I embrace challenge. I don't want to, I guess I can say I embrace the suck.
Sure.
So I'm still like struggling with like this middle path of like being self-compassionate, but also like doing really hard things and embracing suffering because with my running and such, like I've definitely been out there and suffered immensely.
Yeah. I've seen the videos. It was still kind of when I was new to your story, and there was a video of you running out in the rain, and you were kind of just talking, and and it looked like it sucked. But I think it was almost like a perspective video of. You were talking about, I love running when it's raining because there's nobody else out here or something along those lines,
right. Yeah. So if you want the place to yourself, go the extra mile.
Yeah.
It's like, again, it goes back to like just being comfortable, being uncomfortable, and knowing that like growth is going to come from that. And like when I post up in my running group, like, hey, I'm running Saturday at 6 o'clock in the morning. Like people already know, like it doesn't matter. It could be snowing. And I'm going running at 6 o'clock in the morning on Saturday. So, and
that change, because I imagine you were doing some of that in the military. You're doing a lot of that in the military, being in the groups that you're in. So I wonder if that was enough to really keep your head above water. And I'm just shooting off the hip here, but so it's almost like that you knew that was a path to feeling a certain way about yourself. But there was still this anchor pulling you down the entire time. You've just gotten rid of the anchor and you're continuing to do those things that kind of give you, really inner pride, right? And it comes down to how you feel about yourself. But I'm speculating here. I'm not your shrink.
And I think a lot of the running and the stuff that on the events I do and stuff like that, it really fills something in me that I lost when I left Spec War and I went back to the conventional forces, and I wasn't really into the operational side of it all. Like I couldn't really get jazzed about like this sidewalk project we had or something. You know, I was like, dude, I just came from like jumping out of airplanes and driving high speed boats and doing things that like I was seeing on the evening news, you know?
Sure.
And so I was like, I needed something to fill that hole that was left. And that's when I bought a pair of running shoes and some nutrition and a water bottle and said, I'm going to train for a marathon. And then from there, it became an ultra marathon. And then from there, it became, I'm going to run 100 miles. And,
awesome.
And it's all that planning, preparation, putting things together, doing something that was, hard. It's all just like, it definitely does something for me. I love it. I absolutely love it. I love the discipline of it all. I love, you talk about consequences of habit. Like I have these habits today that fill me and make me a better person. One of those is, getting up to like this, like, yeah, sure. It's 5 o'clock in the morning here, but it's no big deal. Like I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning because that's my habit.
Sure.
And, I go to bed when the sun goes down. I get up when the sun comes up,
Hey, you mentioned doing some charitable stuff and, one of the things that you've got coming up, and it's the 31 miles in memory of, is it extortion? Am I saying that right?
Yeah. Extortion 17. So I've done that. Yeah, I've done that for a few years now. So extortion 17 was the flight number that was shot down, lucky shot, RPG in Afghanistan. And on board were 30 special operators and 1 military working dog. And those were members of the command I worked at for a long time. And in particular, there's a gentleman on board named Thomas Ratzlaff. And I call him Rat. Everyone called him Rat. And I went through selection and training with him in 2003. And then we got out, and he was my boat crew leader for a while. And we did our first deployment together after selection and training. And he was an awesome dude. Just like, everyone was great on that flight. You're on there, all great, but I really had a connection with Rat. So I'm doing it in his memory, and for, like I said, for a few years now, I've always done something with 31 in it. It's normally 31 miles. Either I'll ruck hump 31 miles. I did I ruck humped 1 year in Okinawa, Japan, 31 miles. It was one of the hardest things I ever did in my life. It was so goddamn how I think I got freaking heat stroke or something. It was really bad. And I usually run it, and I'll do it either I've done trail races for it, or I'll just do it on the road. And then 1 year I was hurt, so I actually did 20 miles of bike riding and an 11-mile run for 31 miles. But yeah, so this year coming up, I'm going to do it August 7th will be 2021. It will be the 10th anniversary. And I'm going to do it out in northern Japan, Lake Tawada. It's a 29-mile loop around the lake, but I'm going to tack on an extra 2 miles. And there's one really big hill climb there. So, of course, I'm going to start the bottom of that hill climb. So I get to hit that hill climb twice. So it'll be about 4,500 feet of climbing, 31 miles. Hope to do it in less than 6 hours.
How do you tie in suffering and mindfulness training? How do you think those two kind of intertwine with each other?
Great question, man. Well, I can bring up a good example of that. Was I did a 100-mile run in August of 2020, and I remember at mile 35-ish, I got a massive pain in my my right ankle. And at first I thought I was stung by a bee. I actually stopped and pulled down my sock, and I was like, damn it, there's not a bee there. I wish there was. It would be easier to
Right.
explain why it hurt so bad. But anyway, so my mind went to like, boom, my God. Like if your ankle hurts this bad at mile 35, how are you going to do 65 more miles? And then my mindfulness training went, boom, bring it back, dude. Bring it back to right here, right now, in this mile. Stay in this mile and just do the best you can in this moment, in this mile. Stay within each footfall, rather than letting my mind trip out into the future. And what's crazy is, and I don't know how this works, but I felt better like 30 miles later than I did at mile 35. I felt better at mile 65. But then I kind of fell apart at mile 75. But and so my mindfulness training too is like is breathing into the pain and some visualization stuff that I'll do. Like I'll literally run if I'm hurting. Like I'll imagine like a healing golden light in my in breaths and breathing out like almost like his name Michael Duncan or something. The guy in the Green Mile when he had all those black bees coming out of his mouth. I'll imagine that type of stuff, and it helps. Yeah. It helps to relax around it and accept it, and I have a lot of these little tips and tricks I do, and I think just having a meditation practice every day, it makes me more in tune with my with what's going on, my internal landscape, and I don't know. I can really objectify pain today and like not let it rule me. And I'm not saying that's always good. I don't want to say like I'm some masochist, and I'm not condoning like go out and run on broken legs or something. But at the same time, it's like accept some suffering. That's for sure. Especially if it's something you can't change, because if you can change the situation, then change it, make things a little more comfortable for yourself, I guess. But if you can't change it, you just have to embrace it, or anything else is like madness. So.
It's an acceptance.
Yeah.
Thing. Yeah. I'm not telling you something you don't know, but your ankle is a metaphor for recovery in itself. And I think that's one of the biggest things about telling somebody or somebody trying to even go through that process. They're like, dude, wait, you tell me I can't drink for the rest of my life? They're like, no, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying maybe not today or the next 5 minutes or whatever it takes. And then you'll be surprised, just like the miles tick away,
Yes, absolutely.
How did that process work for you? I mean, as far as you mentioned 12-step saved my life. Is that morphed into more just a mindfulness thing? Like you're just a little more emotionally aware than you were, or a lot more emotionally aware than you were then? How do you stay on that path of just kind of acceptance and being in tune with what's going on between your ears?
Yeah, well, I would think that first of all, like putting time and distance between myself and the last drink, and also like having a mindfulness practice have made me like less emotional anyway, so it's like I have less stress and less emotion to even have to deal with to begin with. And then it's much more easier to tamper it than it was before. It's like when these tools of living a good life, it's in a way, like it can use the analogy of like, the toolbox and the tools that are within it. The thing about them is like, as I use them, like they get bigger, so they're easier to find, So when I first got into sobriety, like I was like stark raving sober. So like, it looked like what were my tools? Well, my tools were like more coffee, more donuts, more cigarettes, Sure. and then wondering why I was like just going crazy. Because I mean, I was probably doing just about everything wrong in early sobriety, other than the one thing I was doing right, which was I wasn't taking a drink no matter what happened. And then over time, things just got better, through working through the 12-step program, and now working, more of a Buddhist type program of. I got into like refuge recovery, and then recovery Dharma, and even like Buddhist recovery network, and a lot of that, a lot of it is, the 12 steps are kind of related to it in a way. But yeah, a lot of that is like, just just following those precepts and, accepting the Four Noble Truths and trying to take the Eightfold Path in my life. So, and yeah, man, things are just continually getting better. So
is that been a part of living in Japan that's been really appealing to you? Is that aspect of it, you think?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, I love Japan. I absolutely love Japan. In Japan, we have a lot of Buddhist temples here. We also have a lot of more Shinto temples, and I really like the Shinto religion is pretty cool. It's a very natural religion where they're really into worshiping the mountains and the rocks and the trees and everything, and it's pretty cool. You go to the trailheads here, and they'll have a torii gate, like the big red torii gates. Mm-hmm. And a torii gate is cool because it marks a line of demarcation between the mundane and the spiritual.
That's cool.
So you get up to a trailhead, and I'll bow for the torii gate. And as I enter the trail to go into the mountains, I'm now into the spiritual side, where I just came from the mundane. And then on top of all the mountains too, they'll have little shrines and temples and such that are up there. So, and I just climbed Mount Awadi a couple of weeks ago. It's the tallest peak in the Awadi Prefecture, and then on top there's a Buddha statue, and there's some shrines up there. I thought that was really cool. But yeah, so part of it's that I really got into refuge recovery, the Buddhist recovery path in California, and it was just I don't know, it was just a natural progression for me. I'd gotten into mindfulness and meditation in California through a program called Mindfulness for Veterans. And I was in a class for stress and family. It was I think it was called Focus, like families overcoming stress or something like that. Mm-hmm. And the counselor, I think, my PTSD was like the elephant in the room that I didn't know I had, but she could tell I definitely needed some help. And I remember she slid a pamphlet across the desk at the end of one of our sessions. She was like, "You might want to check this out." And it was called Mindfulness for Veterans. And I ended up going there, and it was really cool. It was led by this 40-year PhD hippie from Ojai, California, and it was in Camarillo, California. And I went in the room, and there was a bunch of Vietnam vets, a Korean War vet, and some OAF, OEF vets. And yeah, we went. I mean, I didn't even dip my toe in meditation. It was full court press meditation from my first session. I remember I was
really
the first time I went, we did a 45-minute long meditation, which to me was holy crap.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm up for challenges, so I stuck with it, and I kept going back. And then from there, I ended up deploying. I was in a deploying unit at the time. I had deploying to Okinawa, Japan, and I just I downloaded the app Headspace before I left, and I kept with it. And then when I got to Okinawa, I was really, prior to leaving, I got into refuge recovery, and I missed those meetings, so I decided to start a refuge recovery meeting in Okinawa on Sunday nights, and to kind of give an alternative to for 12 steps, because 12 steps is for a lot of places that's all they have. So I figured that if somebody didn't want to do 12 steps, maybe they want to do this. And
what is it?
That digged it.
What is refuge recovery? I don't know anything about it.
Oh, okay. So refuge recovery is a program that utilizes the Four Noble Truths of Buddhism and the Eightfold Path of Buddhism to help heal the suffering of addiction. And it's open to addictions of all kinds. So it's not just alcoholism, and it's also could be process addictions, or eating or something like that, or sex addiction, whatever it may be.
Sure.
Yeah. So, and there's a book out, and there's tons of meetings. There was also, there was some controversy within that fellowship, and from that controversy of the leadership within there, another fellowship sprung out of it called Recovery Dharma, which is the same thing, really. And it had a really strong online presence, so which was super helpful when the pandemic came, because there wasn't a struggle to convert to online meetings, so
Sure.
they had a really strong online presence.
Yeah, I have to check those out. Yeah, that's like Stoicism was kind of that thing for me, and I think whether it be in Buddhism, and I'm speculating. You've mentioned the fact that when you get into the 12 steps, there's a lot of similarities between these things, and I know even within Stoicism, you can find a lot of these same things of just understanding, connecting actions with feelings, wanting to escape. And then having some principles, some guidelines to guide you through some of your life. Because, I've always said, when I look back, I just realized I was along for the ride for a long time. I didn't have these guidelines and these principles. And yeah, even now, if I'm not consciously thinking about it and making it a part of my life, then it's very easy. Like my default mode is not healthy. It's not a healthy one, right? Like I need to keep on top of it because for whatever reason, it's just, again, it comes back to acceptance. It's just kind of the way I was born, I think.
Yeah, I can relate to that. And I think I've done therapy and some mental health treatments and stuff like that. And that's been super helpful too. Like, yeah. I'm not shy to talk about that. Because, without like healing those underlying conditions, like even if I'm not drinking, I'll find something else that, something else to do to an extreme level that may not be healthy, if it gets me outside of myself. So, as I've said in the past, it's like my addiction is like a shapeshifter, it's like, it doesn't, just because I put down the alcohol, just because the monkey's off my back doesn't mean the circus left town.
Oh no. Do you think you replace some of that with running at times?
Yeah, I mean, there could be some of that going on, but at the same time, it's like, I don't know, man, because I think at times I started definitely down that path, and I got hurt in 2019. Hurt real bad. I had a 9mm bulging disc in my back. Ooh. And that actually was like a blessing in disguise, because what it did was it took running away from me. And I started to look at like, what was I doing with running, and was I using it like in a disorderly way? So I went into counseling, and it was pretty funny. It was like, I'm like talking to the guy like, hey, yeah, I'm here for therapy because I've heard that like unresolved trauma can manifest itself in the body as like injuries and problems. So yeah, I've been through a lot, but I'm like, I really just want to get healthy so I can run this 110-kilometer race that's coming up. And the guy like, running sounds really important to you. Like, let's explore that. And so, because I was doing it for a while for the wrong reasons. I was doing it from a place of like ego and doing it from a place of like self-worth, and was putting too much emphasis on like the distance I was doing and my times and stuff like that, and validating my existence through running. So like it was like, if you replace the word took alcohol out and just plugged in running and went through the scenario and like the DSM-5, it would probably be like, yeah, this dude's got a problem with running.
Yeah. The only reason I even ask is I don't know if I've had a gentleman named Taylor Spike on, and I don't know if you've heard of Taylor or know his story, but same thing. He comes from a world of alcohol misuse, and for whatever reason, he started running. And it's not for whatever reason. He's got a very specific reason, and he just got done with a Cocodona 250, so he's doing 250 miles in 3 days, and he's talked about it. He says, he's pretty open. He says, I've replaced it, except the consequences right now are different. But I do think it's important to, we talk about ego and identity. And you even mentioned, so I left the special operations community, and that's a big part of somebody's identity. And now you've got these other projects, and it's a hard time getting excited about it. So you need something else to latch onto, and we all do. I'm not saying like just you. And it's I'm very curious about it. I'm curious about just the way the brain works when something that is so important to you that is your identity is no longer there. Where do you go from there, and how do you keep moving forward? And for some people they crumble, and other people that obstacle becomes a way. And I don't have anything more to say about it other than I'm really interested. Yeah. I think it's a pretty cool.
Yeah, it was difficult. I mean, I had a time where I was like, well, I had to be comfortable with the fact that I may never run again. So I was like, well, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
And then it was like, well, I'll find something else, or I won't. I guess, I don't know. Like, I had to be okay with it. And then when I healed and I came back to running, I wanted to come back to it from a different angle. I wanted to make sure that, like, hey, I'm going out running today, not because I have to run or, I'm not going to be right. Like, I wanted to say, well, I'm going to go run today because it's good for me and it's fun, but I'm not like, I need to run. Like, it's not like it was. Like, I was really a slave for a while to a spreadsheet. I had a spreadsheet that said, like, today you're running 12 miles.
Oh, really?
Like, I don't give a shit what you feel like or anything. Like, you have to do these mileage. You have to make these miles. And then, again, like, I liked posting the results. I liked the accolades. I liked all that. So I started to really identify, like, that was who I was and I needed it in my life. So again, it's like if I don't heal the underlying condition of whatever's going on, like, I'll continue to do things like to an unnatural level. Cause I did the same thing with motorcycling. Like, when I first got sober, I got a motorcycle. I put 60,000 miles on that motorcycle.
Jesus.
Like, I was constantly on it. I was an everyday rider. I rode again. I liked the discipline of, like, people are like, dude, you're riding today? Like, it's 15 degrees outside. I'm like, oh, well, fine. I had heated gear, the whole nine, and all that. And then I got into, this GPS treasure hunting game. It's called geocaching.
Yeah, I know.
I was like, I couldn't go out and just find like 5 geocaches. I found 1,500.
Good Lord.
Right. So it's like, and it got to the point where it wasn't even fun. Like, I was, my wife at the time, God bless her, like, I dragged her through some hellacious things like motorcycling and geocaching and even running, I mean, she cruised a lot of these crazy runs I did. She was right there for my 100-miler that I did. That was a self-supported journey of, in Japan. So I don't know, man. It's, I guess I've always had a problem with portions.
Well, there's a gentleman I had on here named Freddie Shigag, and he said when he was born that God just touched him and said excess, and everything you're going to do from here on out is going to be an excess. So it sounds like you might have gotten touched by that same God.
Yeah. So. Yeah, it's just, man, I'm just trying to do things at a good, healthy, natural level, Don't ever want to overcook anything. It's like I said before, it's like always just trying to find that middle path, just trying to find that middle way between, like, embracing suffering and being self-compassionate, and going out and doing maybe I could just go do a 10-mile run. I don't have to do a 100-mile run.
Right.
I don't know, but yeah. So
what's your daily mindfulness practice look like these days? So
I wake up early in the morning, and one of the first things I do is I make a cup of coffee, honestly, and then I do a meditation. Whether it's usually a guided meditation, sometimes a silent meditation, anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes, and then sometimes I'll do them in the evening as well. I tend to do like longer ones on the weekends, like a Sunday. I like to throw in like a 30 to 40-minute meditation. I also incorporate it within my running and such too. Like, I've done meditations prior to a run. Mm-hmm. I call it the cool down before the run. Mm-hmm. So go from like my work day rather than going from my work day and then throwing on my running clothes and getting out the door and running right when I get home. I'll come home, throw on running clothes, sit for 5 to 10 minutes, observe my breathing, observe what I'm feeling in my body, just get there, get mindful, get in the moment, and try to extend that mindfulness and that in the moment into my run. I've done it too, where I've run, like, especially out in the mountains or out in the forest, I'll stop like mid run and just set my timer and sit for 10 minutes and just listen to the sounds around me. And it's amazing.
Yeah.
You know, it's amazing the amount of sound and activity out there. And it's really cool too, is like, it enhances my trust, because, you know, it's something to close your eyes, and hear sounds around you and be like, I'm safe, I'm comfortable, it's okay, rather than like, what the hell is that?
Yeah, right.
It's a bear.
Have you worked in breath work, almost like a Wim Hof kind of thing also? Have you explored that?
Yeah, a little bit. I've not really so much the Wim Hof method. I'm familiar with it, but I've dabbled a little bit into, since you talked about Wim Hof, was like, cold showers and stuff like that. Yeah. I think there's definitely something there. There's something in, like, I just saw recently, like, I didn't realize that there was such a thing as called the mammalian dive reflex, where you can splash cold water on your face, and especially into your nasal cavity, and it'll help calm you down. It will initiate that parasympathetic nervous system.
That's it.
Also, I've done box breathing. I've done what they call the 4-7-8. 4 second in breath, hold for 7, out breath 8 seconds, because that extended out breath is really, one of the keys to getting the parasympathetic nervous system going. So I have definitely done that. And, I've done Kundalini breath, where you like, inhale through one nostril and breathe out the other. So yeah, stuff like that, man. It's all super helpful. I believe in all that. Like, I love delving into all these different wellness practices and then putting them into my life. So as much as I like to read about things, I really like to be about it and see what it can do for me. Yeah.
How much of a transformation have you seen within the military community, that being open-minded to these different practices, say from the time that you've started to now? Yeah.
I mean, I never even heard of it. Well, I guess I didn't hear about it. Nobody called it what it was. So I remember in boot camp, 1997, I remember my RDC, he was into powerlifting. He was into weightlifting. So he was big into visualization.
Yeah.
So I remember we did an exercise where we were doing, it was like the recruit Olympics or whatever. And we were about to win this thing. And our last event was a tug of war. And I remember laying on the floor and him telling us to concentrate on our breathing, and then start visualization of us getting up, holding onto the rope, how we're going to crush the opponents, blah, blah, blah. So like, that was mindfulness. That was meditation. Sure. Then I get out of that. I get to my tech school and I go to the gun range. And when they're talking about concentrating on my front sight, and they're talking about taking a breath in and watching the sight rise and taking a breath out, and then we pause, pull the trigger slowly, and boom, like, that's in a way a mindfulness meditation practice as well.
It is, yeah.
And then I really got into it with special warfare. Like, they're more open to things that they think are going to optimize their human performance. So if you tell them, like, hey, maybe thinking about this breathing exercises, they're like, will that make me a better operator? Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I'm down, and then a byproduct of that is like, well, it may also make you a better person as well. So I was first exposed to box breathing with special warfare. And now I just saw, we're a little behind the times here in Japan, but someone pushed me an article about the Warrior Toughness Program, which is being facilitated in boot camps in the Navy. And geez, I think I could be off, but I think his name is Stephen Drum, might be the retired Master Chief SEAL that was part of putting that thing together. A big part of that is mindfulness, and they're calling it mindfulness breathing. Well, that's another way of saying meditation.
Sure.
But if you say meditation to some people, they're like, I'm not into that hippy-dippy bullshit, but if I just call it, well, how about we just sit down and concentrate on our breathing for 15 minutes? And they'll be like, okay.
Yeah. Call it tactical breathing. And,
right. Let's call it tactical breathing.
Yeah. And they'll be all in. But yeah, I've seen a lot of it's just been through the podcast here and my own experiences, but I'm seeing it having a huge impact within the veteran community. So whether it was somebody who started it as a way to improve themselves as a tactical athlete, or now they've gotten out of the military and it's helping them kind of deal with some of the PTSD issues. I had
for sure
the people from Humble Warrior. I don't know if you've ever talked to them.
I'm connected with them on LinkedIn for sure. Heath and Elaine, right?
Yep, that's them.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people out there doing some great things. I think we're just kind of getting into it and dipping our toes into what is possible with it. And I'm excited to see some of the benefits. Something's got to change, right? Real change comes because there's no other alternative. And we've gotten to a point where we know, just not to say that medication doesn't have its place for some people. It's been a lifesaver, but there's other things. It's just like recovery. There's other ways to go about it, and we definitely have to be willing to explore stuff that maybe isn't in our comfort zone. We've always thought these people were just, smelling like patchouli oil and did yoga and wore sandals, Birkenstocks, and but there aren't.
Not that there's anything wrong with that, so yeah. But no, it's been totally more acceptable now, and I actually have become known as the meditation guy here on the Salvo Air Base. So I get health promotions get a hold of me every now and again and say, "Hey, we've got a wing here in the Air Force that would like you to come over and do a meditation presentation." And I'll come over and I'll give them here's a quick down and dirty of what meditation is and what meditation isn't, and so on and so forth. And then if they're comfortable with it, we'll do a 10-minute mindfulness of breathing practice. And I've yet to get a bad review. I mean, if there are people that they just keep it to themselves.
Yeah.
But people normally love it, and then they're interested in it. So I had a meditation group going for about 2 years here called Masala Meditates. I've just wrapped it up, and I'm turning it over to somebody else because I'm leaving in a few months. Yeah, so it's become way more accepted. People are looking for alternatives, and I'm excited to see all the stuff that's coming. And I think it's important to develop all sorts of different pathways, because what works for me may not work for somebody else, So it's important to have multiple pathways out there for people to help themselves.
Sure.
For sure. Hey, there's no shortage of trauma, that's for sure. So we got to figure out some stuff to do for it.
Well, and there's no shortage of trauma, and there's no shortage of ways to temporarily escape it. Right. So, I was trying to, a listener had asked me some questions, and I had written a response to him, and it made me really think about that. Like, there's been trauma forever. Like, there's always been trauma, but I don't know if we've always had escape so accessible as it is these days. And, and this is the elephant in the room, right? Like these, I'm holding up a phone.
Exactly where my mind went. I was just thinking the same thing. Yeah.
Do you find this, do you find that an easy, do you find that that's something you go to and you can identify that when you're like, oh yeah, there's definitely something there?
Yeah, there's definitely. So, and again, it's, I've talked about this, is this like, whenever I get a feeling of like reach for my cell phone, just every now and again, pause. Like, what's going on? Like, why the hell, what's actually going on right now? Why am I going for my cell phone? Is it because there's some uncomfortable feeling or emotion or something has come up that I don't want to think about or deal with? Or maybe it's something like, hey, I wonder why does, plankton glow in the dark?
Right.
I don't even know that's true, but just an example. So yeah, as you said, it's easy today to just scroll endlessly through social media or Instagram or what have you, and just like fucking input. It's like, oh my goodness, we've never, it's like overstimulation, undernourishment.
It is. I was just listening to you. I'm sure you know of Sam Harris, right? So I'm a big Sam Harris fan, and he had somebody on the other day, and they were talking. This guy comes from the tech world, and he was saying, I think we're going to look back at our phones and social media like we looked at smoking on airplanes. Like like what the hell were we thinking? I mean, we were putting these addictive things in our kids' faces, and I don't know if he's right. I have a feeling he might be.
It's sad, man. It was like we've never been so connected probably in history, and yet so disconnected from each other,
or from ourselves.
We no longer, and from ourselves. Yeah.
It's crazy. I mean, and don't get me wrong. There is power in it. There's power in the apps, and there is, but you really got to wonder: is the juice worth the squeeze? Because the amount of alone time that we would have to contemplate our thoughts without them, it's extraordinary. I mean, can you imagine a flight right now without a phone? What the hell would you do? You would, if they said, "Hey, Chris, you're flying back to California from Japan. No phone, no movies. Good luck." Now, maybe you've got some tools to
bring a book, man.
Yeah, you've got some tools, but there's a lot of people that's like a jail sentence.
Like fucking panic, just panic and thinking about it. Yeah, so it's really is when you think about it. Oh my goodness! Like people bring that thing into the bathroom with them. They freaking. I'm sure if it was waterproof enough, you'd probably be in the shower with it too.
Sure.
It's just like, to think like you're not addicted. It's like, well, put your phone in your nightstand and shut the drawer and leave it there for a week.
Yeah, let's see.
Just the thought of that makes you go, what the fuck?
Yeah,
when I mean, I'm old enough to know. I mean, remember times when phones were tied to the wall and we were free. Now phones are tied to us, and are we imprisoned?
Yeah, I don't think we're too far off on age, and I didn't have a cell phone until, I must have been 28 or so. Mm-hmm. I think when I got my first one. So, and the thought of it now, like if I leave it in my car. We brought the family swimming yesterday, and it was in my car. And if that's not a telltale sign when you're like, oh man, I don't need it swimming yet. For some reason, it should be with me. Like what? There's no sense in that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm not. I mean, this like be one thing if I was like a heart surgeon on call or something. But it's like no, I'm not. It's not that important, man. No one needs to get a hold of me 24/7. Recently, what I've done with some of that is like I've limited myself. Like I realize now that I can set my phone up where I can put a limit to the amount of time that apps are allowed to be open, and then also I can make it just it all shuts down at like 2100. And it's not coming back online until 06. That's awesome. And now, of course, when I go to open something, it will say time limit, and I can like choose to ignore time limit. So it like gives you the option of ignore time limit for a minute, 15 minutes, or ignore it for the whole day. Screw it, I'm going off. I'm going off my diet here. Right. So I mean, it's something, that's for sure. I hope to be able to get away from it more and more and more. And just be disciplined, in what I do, because I post about on average once a day on LinkedIn, and of course, I post a lot on Facebook to show people, some reason I think people are curious what I have for lunch. They're probably not. But I eat a lot of really cool stuff here in Japan, so maybe people are digging it. But of course, the kids and such like that, like the family. Seeing the kids, but I think I'm going to make it. So the whole point of asking the questions of advice you'd give your younger self is I'm laying the groundwork, and I'm trying to get as much input about starting. There's other challenges, right? There's like this 75 hard, and I've got a ton of respect for anyone who does that. But that's a really, you're in some deep water, right? 75 days of no sugar, working out twice a day, 45 minutes, reading so much. So I think a lot of people might,
some people are going to be, let's do it. And other people were like, well, maybe I won't, because that sounds too hard.
Dude, I didn't know it was no sugar. I'm out.
Yeah. Right. So I'm thinking about I'm coming up with ways or some type of program where maybe you can pick what you're going to, they have a list to pick from. But I think one of the mandatory things is going to be some rationing of phone time, or not rationing, but cutting back on phone time. Because I know for me it is, I can talk about consequence of habit. I can talk about recovery. I can talk about all of these things. And I can tell you straight to your face that I am 100%, like many, many others, addicted to that thing. So it is...
yeah, I mean, it's a pacifier, right? It's that thing that we reach for. We reach for something, right? And yeah, I mean, it's so easy, like you said, it's so easily acceptable. It's I don't know. It's like such a distractor when I'm really thinking about it. It's like it just takes me out of the moment.
Yeah.
And it's all in the past, or it's planning in the future. So
that's all it is.
But yeah, I think I would also incorporate into your thing is like, hey, there's probably should be some type of mindfulness in there. Maybe some tactical breathing.
Yeah.
30 days of tactical breathing.
Yeah, there you go. But it's that curiosity. I think that's the important thing. Like you say, hey, I got to reach my phone. I go, and you'll question what's your motives behind it. And that really is the first part, right? I mean, it's being curious and bringing awareness to yourself and not being on autopilot, because that's what these scientists, these engineers, they know what they're doing, right? They're tapping into these. Anyone who's watched the documentaries on this, they are. There's a reason we're all addicted. It wasn't an accident, right, everybody. So
right. They had plenty of board meetings about this. Yes. Trust me. And there was, and they're tapping into, the limbic system, the emotions, the real primordial part of your brain where you, like you said, you autopilot, you're literally in a trance, it's like to just grab it and not even question, like, hold on a second. Let me engage my my prefrontal cortex here and say, why am I doing this? What's going on here? And is there something else? Like, is there something that needs to be addressed? Yeah, man, it's a good conversation to have. That's for sure.
And this next question, the irony is not lost in me asking this. If somebody wanted to find out more about you, if they wanted to check you out on LinkedIn, or God, I feel like
I would suggest they pick up their cellular phone and they open up their app. Yeah, and LinkedIn's the best place, man. So LinkedIn is the best place to get a hold of me. For especially in a professional context, as I joke, but it's true. Like if you find me on Facebook, you're just going to see pictures of what I had for lunch, and it's a better place to get me on LinkedIn, and then from LinkedIn, my email is listed and all that.
Awesome. And once in August, as you separate from the Navy, you're going off to Thailand. What's your education going to be in? What are you looking to?
Yeah. So a couple of different things there is one, I plan to pursue a meditation teacher certification in Thailand. Hopefully the pandemic is lifted enough that I may be able to do that face-to-face somewhere. And then also I've been accepted into Arizona State University, and I'm pursuing a master's of social work. Awesome. So I hope to take my academics, my life experience, and my passion for wellness, and come back around someday and help some people.
Fantastic, man. Awesome. Yeah. I think that I've said it before, but I have just a ton of respect for somebody who can assess their own life and make these massive changes in it for the better. And I have even more respect for somebody who does that and then gives people blueprints to do the same thing. I think it's amazing, and it's definitely part of recovery, right? It's part of your own recovery. Is bringing other people along on the path with you. So, Chris, man, I really appreciate you coming on. I love your story. I appreciate your openness to it, and I think there's a lot to be learned from everything you've gone through.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it. I really appreciate you having me on, man. It was an honor to be here. You got a great podcast. Keep it up.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, bro.
All right, that's it for me. Thanks to Chris Norris for coming on the podcast and just sharing his story. Make sure to check him out. He's really active on LinkedIn. I'll have his link in the show notes. Also, be sure to support him in his upcoming run here in August for the Honor Foundation. That's it for me. I'll check you guys all out next week.